I think we are live. Hey, everybody. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Lila Rose podcast. For those listening later, welcome. And for those on YouTube, hey, everybody. I'm going to be keeping my eye on the chat. Last time the chat was not working for me, but this time it is. So I see people already in here. Hello, Colonel Sanders. Hi, Isaac. Hi, Ellie. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Great to see everybody. We have a great show today because some of us at least, listened to the State of the Union last night, hearing from President Joe Biden about the State of the Union, about basically his campaign speech for the next year. So you're going to hear a lot of the things that he said in the State of the Union, in his campaigning over the next year. Get ready, buckle up. It's going to be a wild 2024. But we're also going to be debunking the President's State of the Union. We're going to talk about particularly the misinformation and the controversy around the Kate Cox Texas case. Very important for us to talk about, especially for the sake of the pro-life cause. And we're also going to talk about Alabama's big law that just went into effect, giving IVF providers complete legal immunity. This is also a really big deal. I'm going to take your questions as well. Hey, Isabella. Thank you. I'm glad you like the background. Yeah, we're experimenting, and I like it too. Hello. Someone's saying, I saw Isabella's stream last night, excuse my language, but the State of the Union was a complete, I'll just say disaster is what you're saying. Yeah, I agree. The State of the Union was very acrimonious. It was very angry. I thought that it was very almost difficult sometimes to understand what President Biden was saying at different points, but we're going to actually play clips here in a moment to hear what the president actually said, especially on issues of life and family. That's what we're going to be focusing on in today's live. Hey, everybody. Hey, AC. Named my baby Lila. Oh, that's so great. I love that. That's really special. Thanks for sharing that. All right. Well, first of all, I have to thank our sponsors for today. We've got 3 great sponsors. You guys know I love my Good Ranchers. GoodRanchers.com is American meat delivered. And this is American source. So it's from American ranchers, meat, pork, poultry, fish. And it's Easter coming up here soon, and they have this great deal where if you order a subscription box of this amazing meat, my husband and I love it, you get a $119 value, a 10-pound free Easter ham. So if you want a free Easter ham that's delicious from American-raised pork that's humanely treated, you can go to GoodRanchers.com today, use the code Lila at checkout, and get your free Easter ham. If you like ham, if you've been giving up meat for Lent, this is a great way to celebrate the resurrection. So go to GoodRanchers.com today and you can put in that order, get your American meat delivered. Also, a big shout out to our sponsor, 7 Weeks Coffee. I don't have my mug here with me, but that's what I had this morning. 7 Weeks Coffee is America's pro-life coffee brand, and it's delicious coffee. Let me know in the chat if you tried 7 Weeks yet. I hope you did, because 7 Weeks truly is gourmet, delicious, small batch, ethically sourced gourmet coffee. And 10% of 7 Weeks proceeds, all of their revenue, not just profit, goes directly back to fund the pro-life movement that directly gives that money to pregnancy resource centers and moms in need. So when you drink 7 Weeks coffee, you get your coffee delivered right to your door. You're also supporting moms and babies in need. And then last but not least, everylife.com. You guys know I love EveryLife. This is America's fastest growing diaper and wipe company for all the young parents, or if you've got nieces or nephews. And everylife.com is not just a best-in-class diaper, so it's better than, as good or better than whatever you're going to find in the grocery store, but it also is ethically sourced, and it is a pro-life company. So they as well donate back to the pro-life movement. Did you know a lot of these diaper companies like Huggies and Pampers actually support abortion through their employee corporate programs? That not EveryLife. EveryLife actually gives money back to the pro-life movement. It's amazing. So check out everylife.com today. You can order your diapers and wipes there using the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. That's everylife.com. Okay, we're going to go to State of the Union now. We heard from the president last night. He had a long speech to give, and he definitely talked about abortion. You're going to hear about abortion a lot in this campaign season. The 2024 election, some people are saying abortion is going to be one of the top issues. I think that's true for some voters. There's some statistics saying that 1 out of every 4 Black women are going to have abortion be one of their top voting issues. The president is definitely focusing on reproductive rights, as he calls it, and trying to position himself as a savior for women and his administration as a savior for women. So this is all junk. It's all a lie. There's a lot of lies that he tells in the State of the Union about abortion. We're going to break that down. And then we're also going to hear from Kate Britt, who responds to, she's a junior senator from Alabama, who gave the Republican response to the State of the Union and what she had to say. All right, let's start playing here from the president.
History is watching another assault on freedom. Join us.
He doesn't talk that fast. We have it on speed. We'll slow him down. Not too slow, though. Here we go.
Watching another assault on freedom. Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley, a social worker from Birmingham, Alabama. 14 months ago, she and her husband welcomed a baby girl thanks to the miracle of IVF.
Okay.
She scheduled treatments to have that second child, but the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state.
Okay, let's pause it right here. He's already lying. So he's starting with something positive in terms of a baby being born, not aborted. So there's beauty to that. Obviously, every baby that's born from IVF is a beautiful blessing and has human rights and should be cherished. He's lying already, though. He's saying that the Alabama Supreme Court basically ruled and shut down IVF clinics in the state. That's not what happened. All the Alabama Supreme Court ruled was that if you are an IVF provider, you're not allowed to be negligent and let embryos of your clients, the families that are bringing these babies into the world through your technology, you're not allowed to let them just be recklessly destroyed in your clinic. And that's what happened. The whole reason that the Alabama Supreme Court was even hearing a case was because parents of embryos of children who were frozen basically in cryopreservation in these fertility clinics in Alabama, someone had just wandered in. They had not locked the door, properly secured the embryos. Someone just wandered in and smashed several vials that had embryos in them, killing the embryos immediately. And the parents were trying to get some recompense and doing a wrongful death lawsuit against the clinic. And all the Alabama Supreme Court ruled is that the parents could sue and for wrongful death, that these children could be considered in a wrongful death lawsuit. That was the bare minimum. It's not even saying that you can't destroy babies in IVF clinics. It's not even saying that you can't freeze them in IVF clinics. All the Supreme Court said in Alabama was you can't negligently allow them to be destroyed in your clinic. And what happened after that? Well, a couple IVF clinics were like, we don't want to deal with the liability. We don't want to be so careful. We don't want to have to, hurt our bottom line by having extra security stipulations in our facility. And so we're not going to deal with that. It's not good for our bottom line. And so what did they do? They threatened to shut down. And then you saw this whole frenzy happen in Alabama, which I'm going to talk about later because it gets worse. The story gets worse. But the bottom line is this. I wish the Alabama Supreme Court had done what was right and acknowledged that these children frozen indefinitely in IVF clinics, brought into life in IVF clinics, that they should have equal status under the law with any other preborn child. In Alabama, abortion is illegal, but it is legal to destroy embryos that you bring into life into an IVF clinic. It doesn't make any sense. And so what is happening right now is the hypocrisy really is being shown of, unfortunately, many of the political leaders in the state of Alabama. So we'll get to that more, but first off, he's already lying. That does not happen. All the Alabama Supreme Court said is that you're not allowed to just recklessly let embryos get destroyed in your clinics. And some clinics that wanted to pad their bottom line, they were worried about their own money, wanted to threaten to shut down over it. Okay, let's keep listening.
By a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. She was told her dream would have to wait. What her family had got through should never have happened. Unless Congress acts, it could happen again. So tonight, let's stand up for families like hers. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep this waiting any longer.
Okay, pause there for a second. He's lying about that now people can't have babies because of Roe v. Wade being overruled. Actually, no, now people do have babies because Roe v. Wade is overruled, and there's some states that have more legal restrictions. So 2 lies already. Let's see how many more. I guess I should have like a drink or something every time we hear a lie about abortion. Let's keep going.
Guarantee it nationwide.
All those people standing and applauding are applauding for the deaths of children.
I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader, defending reproductive freedom. And so much more.
Okay, we have to pause here. Just a little background. This is a lie, the word reproductive freedom, the term is a lie because it's not freedom to reproduce, it's freedom to kill. And abortion takes place on a child that's already been reproduced. Reproduction has already taken place. And what happens in an abortion is you kill that child. It's not a reproductive decision. It's a decision to kill a child that's already been reproduced. And he's praising Vice President Kamala Harris for being this champion, he says, for reproductive justice. Obviously, that's a lie. What she's a champion for is abortion and the abortion industry. Planned Parenthood helped her win her Senate race. Planned Parenthood has been in her back pocket for the length of her political career. She's had a very corrupt political career herself, but when she was the Attorney General of California, she was the one who sent state agents to raid my friend David Daleidon's home, who's an investigative journalist, exposing Planned Parenthood, selling baby body parts, and meanwhile, she was getting campaign money from Planned Parenthood. So think about that for a minute. When Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the state of California, this is where she cut her teeth after leaving San Francisco and got this statewide office. She was running for Senate as the Attorney General, and Planned Parenthood was helping fund her campaign. At the same time, when David Daleidon showed the wrongdoing happening at Planned Parenthood clinics in California, selling baby body parts, which is against federal law, Kamala Harris, instead of as an AG investigating Planned Parenthood, as the Attorney General, sent state agents with guns to raid David Daleidon's home and steal his laptops and the evidence of Planned Parenthood's wrongdoing. And then you know what happened? Kamala Harris's agent, someone in her administration, ended up giving the evidence of what David documented to Planned Parenthood. So they actually knew what was on his tapes. It's absolutely insane. It's corruption at its highest. And that is our Vice President of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. So again, you don't hear that in the State of the Union, but this is the dirty past of these politicians, and they're continuing it obviously in the present. So let's keep watching.
My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted.
I'll pause it there. I mean, I don't know that this is I would say, I don't know that this is a lie, but it's probably a misunderstanding. I don't think President Trump went into office saying, I'm determined to overturn Roe v. Wade. I think he was smart and he knew that he needed to appoint justices that the people that voted for him would like, and that would be solid justices, originalists who acknowledge the Constitution and the constitutional right to life. And thank God they went forward to obviously overturn Roe v. Wade. So, this whole thing that President Trump is out to get abortion from the beginning, I think President Trump's a politician, and he's, been very successful in winning the vote of many pro-lifers because he has successfully done some important pro-life things.
Tonight is Kate Cox, a wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act.
Okay, lie. That's not what happened. Her doctor did not say your life is at risk. In fact, if her life was truly at risk in the state of Texas, Kate Cox could have done a medical emergency procedure where she could have delivered that baby early. There is actually stipulations. Abortion is banned largely in Texas, but there are exceptions in the law, which I have some issue with some of these exceptions because I think that they're actually unnecessary. They're actually the result of poor health care where you don't care for both mother and baby enough. But there are exceptions in the Texas law for what they call medical abortions. Kate didn't qualify because her life was not at risk. He is lying right now, the president, to say that, oh, look at this poor woman, her life was at risk and she needed this abortion. And so let's keep listening.
Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass.
All right, let's pause for a minute. We got to break this down for a moment because the Kate Cox, the president of the United States invites every State of the Union a select number of guests. These are very honored special guests that get to attend the State of the Union as special guests of the president's administration. and they get to sit there and their cameras on them, and they're meant to be core icons of the causes and the things that the administration, the president, cares about. So this is a long tradition. And the president chose to invite Kate Cox. And it's essential right now that we take a moment to address the misinformation regarding the Kate Cox case. I've done this before in the show, but we're going to go a little bit deeper right now, because if you just hear it on its face, if you just read a media headline, you see, oh, this poor woman, the sweet-looking woman, she was pregnant and the baby was like dead or dying, and she was going to be dead or dying, and her doctors were frightened and couldn't care for her, and so they had to sue for immediate relief. They couldn't get it from the state of Texas, and so she had to flee the state, this poor woman, right? That is what you hear. That is what President Biden has effectively said, and that is what the media headlines say. But nothing could be further from the truth. The reality of the case is this. If you actually go to the Cox v. Texas case, and you actually read what the attorneys, Kate Cox's attorneys, wrote, and these are her attorneys that are rabid pro-abortion legal activists. So this is I think it's the Center for Reproductive Freedom, and their whole thing is to try to find cases to expand abortion. That's what they are. That's what they do. So if you actually go to the case and you scroll down, it says and admits in the actual brief that is submitted to the court by Kate's attorneys that her life was not at risk. That her life was not at risk, but that she may have to have a C-section, and that there's complications with a C-section, and therefore she deserves to have a late-term abortion. So that's the first piece of information that has been spread, is that her life was not at risk. She was fine, and the baby's life was also not at risk. The baby had a terminal condition, which is called Trisomy 18. It can be a terminal condition, but the baby was alive. The baby was not under distress and needed to be delivered to relieve the distress and get a separate care. The baby was around 20 weeks old, and they did further tests and said, we really think the baby does have trisomy 18. And Kate Cox and her husband didn't want a baby with disability. To be clear, babies with trisomy 18, up to 90% of them are aborted because parents and doctors negotiate together and say, you don't want to have to deal with this baby with disabilities. And so they often get killed in utero. It's not that they're all dying, it's that they get killed. There's a difference. Do we see that? And many of these babies with trisomy 18 can survive, some of them for many, many years after birth. They may have spina bifida, they may have other complications, developmental delays. It's not a piece of cake. They have disabilities, but their life is just as worthy as any other life. Bella Santorum is one such child who was born with trisomy 18. She is the daughter of Karen and former Senator Rick Santorum, he and his wife Karen. And Bella is about to celebrate her 16th birthday this year, Bella Santorum. She's been surrounded by the love and the care of her family. We discriminate savagely against people with disabilities in this country, and it is legal to discriminate against them lethally when they are preborn. And that's what Kate Cox and her husband wanted to do. They didn't want a deal, and so they wanted to abort. And the way they were going to abort is because they waited and waited and waited to confirm that the baby actually had a disability. When they were for sure, the spine is not developing properly, the skull is not developing normally. Okay, this baby's going to have a disability. Well, now we want to abort this baby. Well, this baby's 20 weeks old now. This baby is literally, Kate Cox's daughter was literally days away, certainly just weeks away from being able to survive outside the womb with medical care. And that's when she chose, I need this abortion right away. I need to do it because I do not want to deliver a baby that's disabled. That was the decision that she and her family and she made. And so then she's bullying with her legal team or pro-abort legal team, the state of Texas, to say, how dare you not let me have a late-term abortion on a baby with disability, and building this whole victim sob story around her case. What ended up happening is Kate Cox left the state of Texas for a late-term abortion, and particularly a D&C abortion, which is an abortion where the child is dismembered alive. Let's pause for a minute. This is so heavy. But we're so brainwashed today by media headlines and social media too. And we hear these terms like abortion, reproductive freedom, Kate Cox's story, and we don't actually know what these things mean. Kate Cox left the state of Texas for a late-term D&C abortion. In this kind of an abortion, the child, often viable, just newly viable, second trimester, and fully pain capable. The doctor, it's a 2-day procedure. The first day, Kate would have gone in, they would have expanded her cervix so that they can reach in with their tools and their grasping instruments. The second day, they go in, they put her under, and they go in with, they don't put the baby under, the baby's fully kicking, feeling everything, and they go in and they grab a leg or they grab an arm of the baby and they rip it off and pull it out. Then the next chunk of the baby's flesh, rip it off and pull it out. Rip it off and pull it out till they get to the skull, crush the skull, pull that baby's skull through the vaginal canal, pull the baby's skull out. The baby felt that. The baby was alive. And of course, now the baby's murdered and dead. That's what happened to Kate Cox's baby. And, you know, it makes me want to cry even talking about it, because we sacrificed this little girl because she was disabled and no one defended her. I mean, the state of Texas tried to defend her, but once she got to New Mexico, I think that's where Kate's mom went, where they have abortion through all 9 months. She was just a little lamb that led to the slaughter. And the president of the United States of America, the most arguably powerful person in the country, the powerful seat in the country, in the world, is praising the decision to kill this little girl and saying the poor mother that she had to go through difficulty to achieve the death of this little girl. So it's a shameful display of the powerful over the weak, the domination, the brutal domination that we permit in this country because we deny the rights of the weakest, the vulnerable in the womb. And it's lies. It's just straight up a litany of lies coming from the leader of the free world about a little baby who's not at the State of the Union, who's never going to celebrate her 16th birthday like Bella Santorum, who's never going to know the loving embrace of her mother, you know, because her mother didn't want to embrace her daughter. Her mother wanted to kill the daughter. So that's the truth. That's the truth of the Kate Cox story. Read the court case document yourself. Read Cox v. Texas. Read it yourself. The other thing too is Kate Cox and her husband, they want another baby. They just want it to be healthy. And so, because the question was, well, why don't you just do a C-section, let this baby come to term, do a C-section? She could have placed the baby for adoption. She could have done any number of things. She didn't want to do the C-section and didn't want to let this little baby grow and live and thrive, because if she did, she might not get to have that fourth baby, because another C-section a fourth time can be very challenging, and she really wanted that healthy third child. So this was also an act of eugenics by Kate Cox and her family and her medical team to say, we're going to literally selectively reduce, we're going to destroy the unhealthy family member because we want to make space for a future healthy family member. May God have mercy, right? May God have mercy. So there is the story of Kate Cox. There's the truth that we all should know. And let's get back to the president and his last few comments on life and family from the State of the Union.
Ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look.
I gotta pause it. Sorry, there's two. This is like rich stuff. My God, what other freedoms would you take away? Ban on reproductive freedom. Again, there's no ban on reproductive freedom. No one is stopping someone from getting married and having a baby. There's no law against that. You're free to do that. You are, and you should be prohibited in some places. You should be prohibited in all places, and you are prohibited in some places from getting pregnant and then going and killing your baby after reproduction has happened. So the euphemistic language, the language that's being used here to try to deceive and lie to people is powerful. It has a hold, but it's something that needs to be exposed.
Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you were right about that.
What are they cheering for? Women are not without power to kill. We just have to kill to be free. We don't have to kill to be free. I mean, it's so sad. What are we cheering for? Domination over children. That's what we're cheering for. It's so sad. And, you know,
those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out.
Guess what, Joe Biden? There's a lot of pro-life American women, millions of us. Again, he's lying here. He's lying because he's saying that all women at large are pro-abortion. It is a lie. It's not true. We work with millions of women across the country in the pro-life movement who are passionately pro-life.
In 2020, and we'll win again in 2024.
That's a lie. You're not going to win. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. That's what all the politicians say. We will win. Not if we have something to do about this, but let's keep going.
If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.
Okay. So the president, what most people don't realize, the administration's position on abortion, President Biden's position in his administration, is abortion on demand, without limit, taxpayer funded. This is very important. And they also want to force doctors to do abortions. I mean, that was part of, or to market abortions. One of the things Kamala Harris did as AG was to, she did not respect pregnancy resource centers. And she wanted, and this has been a typical thing amongst a lot of very hardcore pro-abortion politicians, they don't want pregnancy centers to exist because they provide alternatives to abortion. And so they try to threaten or penalize them or say that the pregnancy center has to at least advertise abortion. So the administration's position is out of touch with the large majority of Americans. Most Americans want some abortion restrictions. President Biden and his administration want none. So put that in your back pocket for future conversations about politics and the election with friends who say, well, Joe Biden's a moderate, or, oh, Joe Biden is a unifier. Oh, President Biden is, he's not a zealot. He's not crazy. He's the most pro-abortion president we've had. And he is not a unifier. He's not a moderate. He is an extremist on abortion, and everybody needs to know it. Okay, let's go to IVF and Alabama. This is the second story here. I'm going to check the chat too here. Folks are saying, I hope he doesn't win. AJ says, I cringed just watching his speech. It was tough to watch. I agree. Others saying, if only he would speak so boldly about closing the border. Yeah, I mean, a lot of complaints about, obviously, his border policies, but I think the through line here is a lot of deception coming from the president, especially on the issue of life. So what just happened in Alabama? This is really important, guys, because, listen, our pro-life movement is growing. More states are banning abortion. More states are protecting life. We're very excited at Live Action because more states are putting fetal development into school curriculum. We're seeing this happening across the country, and it's a good thing. But you see a state like Alabama, which is largely a pro-life state. The governor, Kay Ivey, says she's pro-life. The legislature is largely pro-life. They have pretty much an abortion ban in the state. And then when the Alabama Supreme Court made this ruling, IVF clinics, a few of them threatened to close. And then there was this big media uproar, right, where the media was just attacking and blasting Alabama's Supreme Court, saying they're so extreme, giving embryos the same status as, persons. Okay, an embryo, what is an embryo? What is a human embryo? Let's just go have a quick science lesson here. Science shows us that human life begins at the moment of fertilization at sperm-egg fusion. In an IVF clinic, that's what they're trying to do all day long is sperm-egg fusion. Successful sperm-egg fusion to get an embryo and then grow it a few days old and either implant it or put it in cryopreservation, freeze it. So an IVF clinic knows when life begins because they say, aha, we have an embryo. We have an embryo. We have a unique individual, little human that now can grow potentially in the womb of our client, right? In the womb of the person, the family that's purchasing this process, right? So the IVF clinic knows when life begins. The human biology textbook knows when life begins. The scientist knows when life begins. Somehow politicians and the law has not caught up because the reality is if you are human life, you should have human rights. The whole idea of a human right is that human rights are universal and inalienable. Our own Declaration of Independence says this, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights and the universal rights, and the first of these is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And life comes first. So that means that all human beings, if you are human, then you have the right to life, and you have it by virtue of being human. You don't need any other special trappings. You don't need to be 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 5-year-old, newborn, 20-year-old. You don't need to be strong. You don't need to be without disability. You don't need to be a certain sex, race, ethnicity, gender, nationality. You just need to be a human. If you're human, that's enough. So the pro-life position is simple. Well, you're human as an embryo from the moment of fertilization. You deserve to not be killed. You deserve to not be killed. And you should have the legal right to not be killed. And so our job as a civilization, as a society, is to have laws that protect both the weak and the strong. And that includes the weakest in the womb. And they deserve equal protection under the law with the newborn, with the 20-year-old, with the 50-year-old, right? And our 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution has an equal protection clause. It says that everybody, all persons, should be treated the same under the law. And so if you're a human, you should be treated the same as another human. And that extends to the human in the womb. So the logic here is pristine. It's reasonable beyond all belief. It's logical. The science is clear. So where's the rub with IVF? Well, the rub with IVF is this. In the United States today, there are virtually no regulations of IVF. What does this mean? This means that you can go and you can purchase someone's egg or someone's sperm. You can go and create multiple lives in an IVF clinic. If you pay for it, you can create 20, you can create 30. You can decide based on the gender of these embryos or what you perceive to be the health or the potential to grow of the embryo, how genetically perfect they are, whether you want to keep them or kill them. You can just kill them outright if you want. You can then freeze them indefinitely if you want, because maybe you made 4 embryos and you did 2 and you're not sure that you want the 2 others. So you have these embryos frozen. You're paying $1,000 a year to continue to freeze these embryos. And if you implant the embryos in a surrogate or yourself, you can decide after maybe a few weeks, few months of that pregnancy to abort that baby or to abort one of the babies because maybe you implanted 2 or 3. This is a practice called selective reduction where multiple embryos can be implanted legally. And then the mother or the family of who's paying the surrogate can say, no, we want to have an abortion on 1 or 2 of these embryos. There's too many. There's an issue. We don't like it, whatever. This happens. This is not just a theory. This happens. The reality is this is all legal in most of the country. In a country like Italy, as an example, it's illegal to freeze embryos at large, and it's illegal to destroy them. They have IVF in Italy. They have IVF in other countries throughout Europe, but there are far more regulations in most countries. America is the Wild West of reproduction, of IVF. We allow anything goes. And in Alabama, all the families wanted was legal status or legal right to sue the clinic that recklessly allowed their babies to be destroyed. And the Alabama Supreme Court said, yes, you're allowed to sue. That's it. You're allowed to sue. And after that, all the pro-lifers in Alabama, the governor, the Senate, the legislature, they all got together and said, oh no, the poor IVF industry, they're mad, they're sad. We've got to be pro-life and support IVF. And so we're going to pass a law. And this is what just went into effect. We're going to pull up the headline here. We're going to pass a law to give total civil and criminal immunity to IVF clinics in the state of Alabama. I mean, let's break this down. It's so insane. They're saying that if you are an IVF clinic and you intentionally or accidentally through negligence, willful negligence, kill or allow the death of an embryo, you don't have any recourse as the parent to even sue or pursue criminal penalties. And certainly there's no one else who can take on the interest of the child and sue because of their wrongful death. Not a thing now in Alabama. How can these two things exist side by side? Where it's illegal to abort a baby because they're a baby in Alabama, if the baby's in the womb of their mother, but it's not illegal to destroy a baby and kill them in an IVF clinic. How do these two things logically make sense? They don't. But unfortunately, Governor Kay Ivey just signed this bill into law. This was even after Live Action got together with a group of many other pro-life organizations, national organizations, writing a letter expressing our concern about this to the governor. We did this earlier this week, and we had multiple people sign on, and it basically said, you can't just give complete immunity to IVF clinics. This is nonsense. This is not constitutional. It's nonsense. And of course, our letter fell on deaf ears. I want to play one more clip of the response to the State of the Union from Alabama junior senator, excuse me. She's a federal senator, but Alabama Senator Katie Britt. We're going to play the clip.
Opportunities to thrive. We want families to grow. It's why we strongly support continued nationwide access to in vitro fertilization. We want to help loving moms and dads bring precious life into this world.
All right, so they chose to put this in there. So President Biden is saying everyone should have IVF. And the Republicans, Britt, representing the Republican National Party here, is saying we want to have nationwide access to IVF. We want everyone to be doing this. Everyone be doing this unregulated, unethical activity that I understand the intention behind it for many well-intentioned parents, but that has so many abuses around it, and that has led to the deaths of so many children. How can the pro-life Republican Party be for this? It's a huge tragedy. It's a huge mistake that they're making. And I think right now, really the name of the game is education. A lot of people don't know these things. So that's what we're working on at Live Action, and that's what other groups are working on, is just educating people about what the IVF industry is actually doing in this country. So unfortunately, it was a tragic presentation from the president, tragic presentation from Britt, that she put that in there, saying we just need more IVF, more of this unethical practice that's harming, ultimately leading to the deaths of many children. And obviously tragic that Kate Cox is upheld as this icon of women's empowerment at the State of the Union. I want to leave here on a positive note, and then I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat here. Oh, someone just said we can't hear the clips. Oh no. Okay, the clip was Britt, the senator, the junior senator from Alabama, and she was saying, she's a Republican. She's responding to Biden, and she's saying we need families to have, I think she used the word, nationwide access to IVF. So she's basically doubling down and saying we need IVF everywhere. It's just tragic, right? And that's, I mean, sharing that clip because there's no difference here now between the Republicans and the Democrats on this. There's no standards. There's no regulation, anything for the IVF industry. And it's just a wild, wild west out there. All right. Leaving here on a positive note, we've found that when people are educated on these things, when they learn about human development in the womb and they learn about what abortion procedures do to babies, they become more pro-life. We see this in focus groups and surveys that Live Action regularly does. So be encouraged by that. Educating people about what these procedures actually do to babies, educating people about the humanity of the baby does make a big difference. Most people are not well educated. The second thing is this. Politicians, they're just going with the wind. They're trying to do what's going to get them their next election won. They're trying to not make too many enemies. And so if they feel like they're getting major pushback from media, right? Like these Alabamians who were pro-life that were so scared about, oh, poor IVF, now we have to pass complete legal immunity for them. You know, that's a human nature to some degree. We're defending one's position of power, being fearful, etc. But if we are strong enough in our position, if we're loud enough with our position, and if we continue to take back ground on social media, in media, by spreading the truth, which is what we do at Live Action and what I know all of you guys are interested in doing, we can combat that pressure that politicians feel to do the wrong thing by providing pressure for them to do the right thing. So, closing message here is be outspoken. Get your facts and be very outspoken with them. Be proud of being pro-life. Be proud of your position. It is the loving position. Abortion is not loving. These IVF practices are not loving. It is the loving position. It can be a hard truth for some people to hear, but do it obviously with compassion, and it will help change the course of this country. And so thank you for being willing to do that work with me, because we can do it together and we can change the course of this country. I'm going to look to the chat for a moment here to see if there's any questions. SY says, Lila, what is your opinion on DNC for miscarriage? I feel that's cruel too. My mom, when she lost her baby at 20 weeks, was induced. I would find it immoral to remove the baby in pieces. I mean, I have friends who have miscarried and the doctor was recommending a DNC. If the baby is passed away and dead, and that is the safest way to remove the baby, or what the doctors, you're talking with your doctors, working with your doctor on that, I don't think it's morally wrong to remove the baby. I can understand how it's incredibly emotionally painful. But often in miscarriage, the baby can come apart anyways in the process, depending on how long the baby's been miscarried. In my miscarriage, it was earlier miscarriage, but the baby was already, disintegrated. So, it's heartbreaking and tragic, but there's no immorality to it because this baby has already passed. And the intention, of course, is to be respectful and loving. And at that point, you want to make sure the baby has fully passed from the body so that there's no infection. All right, let's see here. And we'll take one or two other questions. Oh, did you do a podcast episode on what happened in France? Thank you for the question. I meant to include this briefly because it's a headline, and we did some content on it earlier this week. But yes, France did just enshrine abortion in their constitution. Totally tragic. They lit up the Eiffel Tower afterwards. And I've been talking with some people from France, and they say the pro-life movement isn't really strong here. We don't really have pro-life, a big pro-life movement. We don't have pro-life politicians right now representing us. So I think it's a clarion call to people of good faith and good conscience in France to say we gotta get together and build a movement, because the opposition has a movement, and they've just done something unprecedented in enshrining abortion in the Constitution. Can it be reversed? Of course it can be reversed. This is not the end. This may be just the beginning, and the fight is on in France. Okay, we'll do just one or two more questions here. Will you have any more collaborations with Ruslan? Yes, of course. He's my friend. He'll be at our event, at Live Action's event, a week from this Saturday in Irvine, California, and he's one of our speakers. There's still some tickets left, I think, so check it out at liveaction.org. But yeah, Ruslan is awesome. All right, last question I'm going to just tackle here. Okay, this is a controversial one. I have a cousin in Mexico who suffered 2 miscarriages. I suspect the vaccine had something to do with it. What do you think, Lila? I don't know. I mean, I know that I've read some of the research that shows that there was a higher risk of miscarriage for women who did get the vaccine. I did not get the vaccine because I thought it was too experimental, and the risk for COVID for me was low, and I didn't think that it was fair or necessary that the government was forcing everyone to do this, effectively coercing people to do this. I have a lot more opinions about vaccines. Maybe we'll talk about them in another episode, but I do think there are some concerning studies and links between the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, and the risk to women. So before you take it, if you're going to take it as a woman, hopefully you're not, certainly read that research, because it does exist and there's increasingly more of it. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining the live today. Thank you for joining the Lila Rose podcast, and we will see you guys next week.